Hello, my dear students. I am Dr. H. V. Anil Kumar. I'm working as Associate Professor of Sericulture, DVS College of Arts and Science, Shimoga. Today, in this lecture, I'd be giving you a very general introductory note on environmental science. To begin with, the etymological meaning of environment. Etymologically speaking, the word environment is made up of two subwords. One is the environor, the other part is meant. Now, this environ is derived from the word environner, which has its root in French. Meant in English means literally a kind of conditions or a result. Putting these two words together, environ plus meant, it's environment. So now we can just understand that environment means that which surrounds. Because environner in French means surrounding. What surrounds us is the environment. And then what are all those different kinds of surroundings that we have? Okay, they all put together becomes the environment. Now, if we can just see around us, what is around us, which surrounds us, is the many things. Simple example to quote that if I'm in this place trying to see what surrounds me is many physical things like furnitures, the walls, the floor, and the roof, and so forth. The other aspects is the physical entities, which you can physically see them and which physically you can experience. Now, these are also a set of conditions. Now, overall, all these things forms the environment. Apart from these physical entities which can be seen, which can be sensed, we also have the other things surrounding us, the many living organisms. Now, if we just go out of this room, then I can just see what surrounds me. Go to an agriculture field, go to a midst of a forest, go to an top of a hill. Now I can see a lot of things which surrounds me. There are plants and animals, and there are very physical entities like soil, water, the river, the mountains, and huge oceans, lakes, seas. Now that means on this earth, when I just see what surrounds me, the whole thing becomes an environment. Now, this is the meaning of environment. Now, if we just try to categorize these um, components which surrounds us, one can be categorized as living components, that is biotic components. The other one which do not have life, we call them as abiotic components. Now, biotic components can be just construed as right from the small microorganisms till the huge mammals in case of animals, and starting from small, you see, unicellular, uh, plants or acellular plants like bacteria, until the most evolved higher angiosperms among plants. Now, all these put together, the biotic and abiotic components becomes the environment. As far as these abiotic components are concerned, can start from adaptive factors like soil factors, that's a kind of land, the water, the sunlight, the temperature, the wind, the humidity, the moistness, what everything that is present within this environment surrounding us, they all become the physical climatic factors. Now, both put together, they becomes environment. Now, the environment can be defined as the physical and biotic habitat that surrounds us. This is one simplest way of definition of environment. The, the physical entity means light, temperature, air, soil, water on this earth. And the biotic surroundings, the biological components, which includes, as I said, that microorganisms to higher mammals, then starting from what you call the acellular um, plant species, okay, like bacteria, and you see then unicellular algae, from there to the highly evolved angiosperms. All of these things can, it becomes an neuron. Now let us try to understand uh, why this particular subject, environment, has to be understood as a science and how it assumes the overall scope of a science. And the entire thing now becomes the branch of biological sciences, and it has evolved itself as environmental science. However, as a non-core subject, this particular environmental science is being given a certain glimpse to the general students of various streams in our higher education as a compulsory paper, and they study it as environmental studies. But basically, this is a branch of life science, biological science, which has got various facets, which I'd like to discuss this in my coming videos uh, when I talk to you about the multidisciplinary nature of environmental science. The other definition of the environment science now, with this all understanding, can be given as it is a sum total of air, water, land, and their interrelationship that exists among and with the human beings and other living organisms. Because even the human beings are the higher forms of animals, and we are all social animals. Um, Zoologically speaking, we are placed in a hierarchy at the top. Now, let's talk about this. Why this particular subject has to be studied as a science and must have a better understanding. See, ever since the what you call the evolution of human beings took place, and since then the man evolved himself, and then later on he also came to a stage of civilizations. And since those civilizations, we see that the man has lived within this environment, and he has adjusted himself to its various kinds of changes that the environment has taken place, and he has got adjusted to itself and living with it together, depending on the environment for his sustenance of life. This is one thing. Second thing is that in the past 200 years, uh, means to say 2 centuries, there is a rapid improvement in economic as well as the population concern. I will have to see why and how. These two things, these two things becomes the basis to understand why this environmental studies or environment science has to be understood in a greater uh, perspectives in depth. If you talk about how rapidly this particular human population increased, and then uh, parallelly to cope with that for its demand, as far as food is concerned, fuel is concerned, the energy is concerned, the man is completely dependent on this environment, wherein this particular environment had all those resources and it is having those resources. And in the past 200 years, the man is completely dependent on this environment for the resources. As the population increased, there was a great demand for food, and this particular demand of food was, catered by, one is the agriculture and food production, and the industrialization took place. And for all this industrialization and modernization, the major source was energy, and this particular energy is available as a natural source in an environment. So therefore, we have natural resources in the environment, wherein the man depended on all on these environmental resources for his sustainability, for his existence of life. What happened later? Later on, we see that the man became so pervasive and so profound in his activities that he altered the overall the complexities of the environmental functioning, and this altered the overall the nature of the environment. Whatever that changed in the environment, now it started resulting as an counterproductive today in nature. And this is what is the disaster. Now that is the reason that where exactly the man made mistake, and all the changes that what has taken place today in the environment is because of the interference of man. And these causes which is being attributed by the human being is called as anthropogenic causes. The interferences by man in altering the environmental dynamics had a counterproductive and affected today's environment. As a result, what has happened? We are seeing the increase in pollution, all kinds of pollution. There is a depletion of groundwater level. There is exhaustion of fossil fuels, and there is change in all our weather patterns, and the climate change is just become horrible. We are seeing global warming, the scarcity of what you call food in many parts of the world, scarcity of water. Now all these issues, which are all because of the man-made changes. So that means to say, the man from past more than 200 and more 100 years now, he never bothered about anything that's what's happening to the environment, but is simply just exploited the environment for his own use. One would say that economic prosperity, and another is that also the greed, the man's greed. Initially, the resources of environment was a need. It was used as a source, basic need. But later on, the man became greedy and exploited the natural resources. And today, because of that kind of exploitation that has happened, we are facing a lot of, natural disasters. Natural disasters, and then calamities, the havocs, and the best example is that the present situation, what we are seeing, that of COVID-19, that is also the man's greed, that we have reached this point. Now, this is the most dangerous part of that. If man never thinks in other way around, that how to uh, grow economically, keeping all the environmental resources safe. That's what we call it as sustainability. Now we'll have to switch over to this sustainability. We need environmental resources for our growth and prosperity, but not at the cost of just completely destroying the environment. Now, the consequences of this man-made, what you call causes, or otherwise I call it as anthropogenic changes which has taken place in environment, is this exhaustion of fuel, the pollution, the depletion of groundwater, the climate change, and then we have global warming, deforestation, and desertification. and then loss of habitat and destruction of biodiversity, which is very, very important resources for which that we have made use of this particular biodiversity for achieving our um, food security, sufficiency, and this is what which helped us a lot. But this is what which gave us an what you call tenant for our global food security, as well as the one which launched so-called green revolution. And because of this green revolution, we were able to achieve today's food sufficiency. But the negative impact is different. The other part of this green revolution. Now, we must now take all these things holistically and look into this environmental issues and find a solution for all those things. Now, it is not just a role of an individual. It's not just an role of an institution or the government. It's not a role of any one particular organization. Now, each and everybody becomes the stakeholders of this um, environment, right from the leader of the nation till the teacher, the artist, and the street vendor, or the businessman, the trader, the students, and who not. Everybody becomes the stakeholder because everybody has got the right to protect this environment. Everybody has got their share to get from this environment, and at the same time, it's the overall what we call responsibility of all these stakeholders to protect and conserve this environment. Therefore, we need to understand this particular subject as a science, and each and every one will have to have an knowledge of this environment in order to save this environment and give this only earth to the coming next generation. Okay, thank you very much. In my next video, I'd be just talking to you about the components of the environment, sharing some of the slides. This is just an video to introduce you the general aspects of environmental science. Thank you very much.